Another tough game for the Orioles, in which one of the only bright spots was their new guy, Scott Blewett. I'll recap it all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Wednesday, April 16th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap what is looking like an Orioles loss to the Guardians here. I'm actually recording with 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth, so pretty sure this one is going to end up going Cleveland's way. I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from this Orioles loss, including the offense not really doing anything until late. Charlie Morton in a little bit of a different way, but struggling again. And hey, Cedric Mullins got a couple of hits against left-handers, which is certainly good to see. Then we'll talk about the 2 newest Orioles. One is Scott Blewett, the right-handed pitcher who the O's claimed on waivers this week. And the other is Chadwick Tromp, who the Orioles signed to a minor league deal as well. Get you the scouting report on both guys. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So we start today with an Orioles loss that just went final as I started recording. Thought Adley Rutschman maybe had an extra base hit, but Stephen Kwan is maybe the best left fielder in all of baseball. He tracks that ball down, and the final score from Tuesday night in Baltimore is the Cleveland Guardians 6 and the Orioles 3 in game 1 of a 3-game set. Orioles with the loss fall to 6-10 on the season. It has been a little bit. It's been since 2022 since the Orioles have been 4 games under 500. But I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from this Orioles 6-3 loss to the Guardians. The first thing you need to know is Charlie Morton once again pitched slightly better, I would say. Each start has been not good, but each start has been a touch better than the last, but he was still bad. And that is the issue right now. Charlie Morton is not a rookie struggling in his first 4 starts, who's getting incrementally better each time he goes out, and you can see some things blossoming. Charlie Morton is a 41-year-old veteran who is on a pitching staff that has barely any other healthy arms, who needs to at least be competent, and has arguably not been that so far this season. His final line from his 4th start in an Oriole uniform, 5+ innings, 5 earned runs on 7 hits, 2 strikeouts, 3 walks, and a home run on 88 pitches. Now, Morton had been getting clobbered so far this season, hard hit rate wise. He did allow only 6 hard hit balls, which was a plus sign. He was really, really good in the 1st, 2nd, and 4th innings. Another good plus sign. Those are the reasons why I said tiny baby step better than his last 3 starts. It should have been 4 earned runs. He came back out in the 6th. He gave up a leadoff single. Cionel Perez came in. Oh, we know Cionel Perez let that run score for it to be a 5th for Charlie Morton, but we can't sugarcoat it. His ERA is 8.84 through 4 starts. Now, his FIP is better. His xFIP is better. If he keeps starting, he is going to perform, I guarantee it, better than 8 ERA. That's just going to happen. He is still a somewhat productive major league pitcher. But the Orioles are also in a situation where they cannot be having one of their starters have an 8.84 ERA. Now, Morton looked like he had fixed himself. The problems in the first 3 starts had just been command. He was spraying the ball everywhere. His zone right on his fastball was low. And what did he do? He pounded the strike zone in the first 2 innings, scoreless against this Guardians lineup. And it was like, finally, he started well. He looked good. He wasn't getting the strikeouts, but he was pounding the zone. He was getting outs early. It's like, maybe he's flipping it the other way. Then in the 3rd inning, he loses the command. He loads the bases with nobody out, but he wiggles out, only giving up 1 run. And I was like, okay, that was a bad inning, but he only gave up 1. If he can get a shutdown inning in the 4th, maybe he can save this. And that is what he did. Quick 1-2-3 inning with a strikeout in the 4th. He's through 4 innings of 1-run ball. His pitch count's not super high. You're like, all right, we're finally seeing the Charlie Morton that the Orioles went and got, where he's not going to be any kind of ace, but he's going to keep you in ball games. He's going to pitch deeper into games. And then the fifth inning came, and it looked, and again, it took much longer on Tuesday than it had in the first three starts, but the fifth inning came, and he looked exactly like the Charlie Morton we had seen. Now, the weather did play a factor. He gives up a leadoff single to Angel Martinez, or leadoff triple, I should say, in the fifth, which on a regular weather day would have been a fly out to right field, but the wind just swirling the ball, carrying it off the wall and right. Kudos to Tyler O'Neill, who made an insane throw to third base that almost got Martinez out at third, trying to stretch it into a triple. That was incredible. Next batter, sac fly, makes it 2-0. Then he starts spraying the ball again. He walks the number 9 hitter, Brian Rocchio, on 4 pitches. Stephen Kwan crushes a 2-run homer, and just like that, we saw 4 pretty solid innings from Morton, and immediately 1 out into the fifth. It's 4-0, at just like that, out of nowhere. Allows a couple more base runners, eventually gets out of the inning to keep it 4-0, then lets the leadoff runner on in the sixth and is removed from the game. And again, like 3 walks in 5+ innings, it's not good. It's not the worst thing in the world. He only struck out 2. That was the other thing. He didn't get the swing and miss. Remember, in those first 3 starts, he was generally, even with the walk issues, getting some good swing and miss numbers. That didn't happen. I mean, 6 whiffs on 35 swings. It didn't get the positives we saw. Now, it was more strikes early in the game and more outs early in counts, which is good, but something's wrong here. And I understand that it could be. It really could be. We have to, after seeing 4 starts, again, that's still a small sample size for a guy who's made 30+ starts each of the last, I think it is 8 seasons at this point. It is 4 starts. It is still a very small sample size for the season of a starting pitcher. But I think after 4 starts, I am now willing to at least say it could be that he's 41 and he's cooked. Now, I'm not going to state that. I'm not going to choose to believe that at this point, because at age 37 and 38 and 39 and 40, he was still a really, really solid major league pitcher who stayed healthy for entire seasons. It's hard to believe that he would go from that to completely crashing off a cliff the next year. It's possible, but I haven't seen enough to say that's going to happen. However, something's off. The mechanics are off. You could see him. The Guardians were loaded with switch hitters and left-handed hitters against the righty and Morton, and he's got that curveball. It's his best pitch. Everybody knows that. Everybody's known that for a long time. He's trying to backdoor, right? He's trying to throw it on the outside corner to lefties, and the arms lagging behind the body, the mechanics are off. He's just leaving the curveball outside, off the corner, throwing the fastball. It's up too high. It's off the corner. He can't sync himself up to throw consistent strikes right now. And again, as I mentioned, the stuff is not bad. What you would think it would be for a 41-year-old, but something is off. And it's also pitch mix. I know he loves the curveball, but if you're not throwing it for strikes as much, he threw a good chunk of changeups at times to lefties. The changeup was by far his best pitch on Tuesday. And honestly, at times through these first 4 starts, his changeup has looked like his best pitch, but it's just never been a pitch he's thrown a lot. If they're going to load you with lefties and your changeup is working, just throw it more. I know you're Charlie Morton and you've made your money off that curveball. Just throw the changeup. You have an 8.84 ERA. It's probably been your best pitch. It's time to throw it a little bit more. And here's the issue. As I said, there's a chance he's cooked. If the Orioles had other starting pitching options, I'd be advocating for them at least to put him in the bullpen as the long man for a little bit, because the stuff can still play up in 1 or 2 inning stints, get him back on track, and then potentially put him back in the rotation at some point. But the Orioles' depth, which they came in with, honestly, a lot of starting pitching depth, it has been massacred by injury early this year. Mike Elias, talking to the media before Tuesday's game, had to bring a sheet of paper so he could read off the updates on every single injured pitcher that the Orioles have. That is not a spot you want your GM to be in on April 15th, 15 games into the season. That is not where you want to be, but that's where the Orioles are. If they had another viable choice, I would say let's put him in the pen for a little bit. But here's the unfortunate reality of the situation. The O's don't have other options. They currently only have 4 starting pitchers in their rotation, because with Zach Eflin going to the injured list, the O's had enough off days where they could skip his starts, and the rain out on Friday helped as well. They didn't need a 5th starter, so they're going with an extra guy in the bullpen. Now they will need a 5th starter on Saturday, and all indications we've seen, Mike Elias said it without saying it, Brandon Young is going to get called up on Saturday and to make that start. So he will be the 5th starter, at least for one turnaround. Beyond Brandon Young, your depth is like Cody Poteet right now, who they claimed off waivers a couple of weeks ago, and it hasn't pitched more than 2 innings when he's thrown in AAA games. Kyle Gibson did make another start in AAA on Tuesday, but he's only up to 60-some pitches, and the Orioles have said he is not a candidate to start on Saturday yet. It's going to take a little closer to May 1st for Gibson to be ready, and hopefully that comes sooner rather than later. But that's where we're at. And I love Kyle Gibson, but it feels like we're kind of counting on Kyle Gibson right now to come in and save this rotation. He's just not that guy at this point in his career. So if Cody Poteet's your other option, even with an 8.84 ERA from Charlie Morton, I'm still taking Charlie Morton. You could argue you'd rather go with Cody Poteet, but I'm still taking Charlie Morton at this point until a better option becomes available for the Orioles. So for at least one and probably at least two more turns through the rotation, Charlie Morton's just going to have to start. And that is where we are right now. He just needs to figure it out because the Orioles, simply because of injuries. And again, part of this is blame on the front office not bringing in higher level pitching. The lack of depth is not on the front office. They did a good job bringing in depth this offseason. Somehow all of the depth and the current starters got injured at the same time. You can't plan for having 7 starting pitchers on the injured list in mid-April, but that's basically where the Orioles are at this point. So that's a tough break. But there's no other option. So Morton, at least for a couple starts, is just going to have to figure something out. He's a smart guy. He's had an awesome MLB career. He's 41 years old and still pitching. He can figure it out. I trust that he will. But even if you gave me a crystal ball and you said Charlie Morton's going to be bad for 1 or 2 more starts and he's going to figure it out, and for the last 25 starts of the year, he's going to look like the usual solid Charlie Morton, that would be great. But it would still stink for this team because when they needed him most, when the rotation was so depleted, he's been bad. He's been straight up bad in these first 4 starts. And again, you can't pull him because there's nowhere else to go at this very moment. That's going to change as guys get healthier in the next few weeks, but there's nowhere else to go right now. He just has to be better. And the Orioles, if they're going to survive this spat early of all these injuries and the poor play, Morton just has to be better. Now, on the flip side, the second thing you need to know from this Orioles loss is that Logan Allen just befuddled the Orioles offense. Now, the O's were at least able to run his pitch count up, and they got him out of the game after 5 2/3, so he didn't even register a quality start in this game. And I think that's something that annoys Guardians fans, even when Allen pitches well. Like, he throws 95 pitches to get through 5 2/3 scoreless on only 2 hits. The Orioles didn't square him up. They had just 5 hard hit balls against him. Struck out 6 times, walked twice. Cedric Mullins had the first hit. That was in the 5th. That's off a lefty by Mullins. That's cool. But, I mean, Logan Allen rarely threw the same pitch back to back. He was dotting the corners with all 5 of his offerings. And the few mistakes he made, the Orioles hitters just did not jump on them. And Logan Allen didn't make many more mistakes than the few that he did. And the best thing the Orioles did was run his pitch count up and get him out of there in the 6th inning. So they didn't allow him to throw like 8 scoreless, and eventually allowed the Orioles to come back a little late in this game. But he was just, and that's the thing, he doesn't have the most overpowering stuff, but when he has good command and he's mixing all 5 of his pitches and he can throw them for strikes on the corners, that's what he looked like 2 years ago. And he was one of the best rookie starters in Major League Baseball. He had a tough year last year. Maybe he's going to be doing that again, and he showed that out against the Orioles. It's just tough when you're struggling and he's throwing 5 pitches wherever he wants. And it wasn't a lot of whiffs. The Orioles were not swinging and missing. That's not how Logan Allen operates. It's soft contact. It's hitting the corners. It's getting ahead. It's frustrating you. He did exactly that to the O's. And the third thing you need to know from this Orioles loss to the Guardians on Tuesday is that the Orioles platoon right-handed bench bats, they didn't do their job really on Tuesday, although they did a little bit better than usual. And overall, they are just not doing their job this season. Gary Sanchez, Jorge Mateo, and Ramon Laureano went a combined 0 for 6 against Logan Allen. All 3 of them were in the starting lineup. Gary catching with Adley DHing. Mateo was at second with Arias and Holiday on the bench, and Laureano was in left field with Kjerstad on the bench. Those 3 hitters are now a combined 2 for 30 against left-handed pitchers so far this season. Now, Gary Sanchez, I'm much less worried about than the other 2, because when it comes down to it, Gary Sanchez is less of a right-handed bat for platoon lineups, and he's just the Orioles' backup catcher. Every team has a backup catcher. Every team needs a backup catcher. Every team's backup catcher is going to start 1 to 2 games per week, no matter what. They vary in offensive performance, but none of them are particularly good hitting players. That's what makes them a backup catcher. And for Gary Sanchez, who back in the day with the Yankees has been a really good hitter at times in his career, he has one of the highest offensive ceilings of any backup catcher in Major League Baseball. And even though he had an 0 for against Allen. He ripped 2 baseballs in this game. He hit 2 balls over 108 miles per hour exit velocity. Like, I'm not as worried about Sanchez. He's going to start 1 or 2 times per week. He's going to start to produce a little bit more. It's a backup catcher. Like, what are you really expecting overall? That's going to be fine. But Ramon Laureano and Jorge Mateo are just not getting it done. And now, they've both hit lefties in the past. Laureano more recently, Mateo some. Yes, he was okay, solid against lefties last year. And at least Ramon Laureano deserves a longer leash. The Orioles brought him in on a 1-year, $5 million deal to be a bench bat, to start against lefties, to be a defensive replacement, to help this team off the bench. And he deserves a longer leash than until April 15th to do that for this team. Now, if we get through April and May and Laureano's not doing anything, well, he's not going to play as against all lefties. And honestly, the O's could cut him, DFA him. It's a 1-year short deal. He's a bench player. They can replace him fairly easily. The Guardians themselves did that last year with Laureano. He was terrible for the first 2 months. They cut him. The Braves signed him, and he was amazing for the final 4 months of the season. And that's why the Orioles gave him a major league deal, because he mashed lefties and really mashed a lot of pitchers when he was in Atlanta filling in for that very injured Braves team. And Laureano was paid to do a job. And this is his 4th start of the season, I believe, against a lefty. Like, you got to give him a little more time to declare he can't do this job before you cut it loose. And if he's going to be on the team, which is he's here to have this roster spot, you got to play him. And Mike Elias and Brandon Hyde talk about this, and they're right. Like, if you have guys on your roster, you got to play them and start them at least every once in a while to keep them fresh and keep them ready for when their time is fully called on. You're not just going to waste roster spots on guys. And as much as I believe, and I've made this very clear, that Jorge Mateo does not deserve a spot on this major league roster, if he's going to be on it, you got to start him at least every once in a while. And it's never going to be against a righty, so it better be against a lefty every once in a while. The Orioles felt against the lefty Logan Allen on Tuesday, that was Mateo's spot to start. Again, don't think he's a major league player, don't think he should be on the team, but if he's going to be, you got to give him some chances. And again, I hope it's the same for Mateo as Laureano. If it's not working and we're into May, you could easily send him packing, but I kind of have no faith the Orioles are going to do that at this point for as long as they have held on to Jorge Mateo. But you got to at least give the guys a chance to get through April and into May in these roles. And if it's really still not working at that point, they're going to make some changes. But they brought these guys in for a reason. They're not going to throw their plan out the window 2 weeks into the season. They're going to give it some time. But it is frustrating that they're not producing in these roles right now that they were brought in to produce in. Now, the 4th thing you need to know from this Orioles loss is that the offense did show some life late in this game. And that was at least a good sign here. Cedric Mullins got the Orioles on the board with a solo home run in the 7th off of lefty Joey Cantillo, his 4th homer of the year, but his first against a lefty. He homered only once against a lefty last year, only 3 times in 2023. So for him to do it in April of this year and also have another hit against a lefty in this game, really good signs for Mullins, who had a 43 WRC plus against left-handed pitching last year. That is a great sign. Mullins has an OPS over 1,000. Like, he has been fantastic so far this year. Jorge Mateo, I mentioned the Orioles are that group of Orioles are 2 for 30 against lefties. Well, they would have been 1 for 30, but Jorge Mateo doubled off that same lefty, Cantillo, in the 7th inning. His first hit of the season. Jorge Mateo has his first hit of the season. Hopefully many more to come. Don't think it's going to be the case, but hey, he got a hit, a double off a lefty, hit a ball hard. All good things for Mateo. And with 2 outs and nobody on, trailing 6-1 in the bottom of the 8th against Cade Smith, who was probably the best reliever in Major League Baseball, at least the best non-closer in Major League Baseball last year, the O's didn't roll over. They showed life. Gunnar Henderson doubles, hit a ball hard in the air. Ryan Mountcastle, an RBI double that he pulled to the left field side. That was good. Gary Sanchez with an RBI single to make it 6-3, just his 2nd hit of the season, and it came off a righty, which was good to see. Like, those were all good things. They made Cade Smith come into the game. They made Cade Smith work hard. The Guardians probably aren't going to use him on Wednesday. That could be certainly helpful. They made the Guardians get into a save chance, so they forced them to use their closer, Emmanuel Clase, in the 9th inning. That's a good thing as well. That could set them up better for the rest of this series. But at least there was life, because there's not been some life at the end of these losses. There was at least some offensive life for the Orioles. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles 6-3 loss to the Guardians on Tuesday is that Scott Blewett made his Orioles debut, and he was really good. Started it off with a 3-pitch strikeout against Lane Thomas. The slider and the splitter he threw were nasty. Splitter has more movement than it did with the Twins. The outing for Blewett in this game, an inning and 2/3 scoreless, 2 Ks, 1 hit, no walks. Like, again, it was in fairly low leverage, but that looked pretty good from Mr. Blewett right there. And now, more on Scott Blewett, who the Orioles claimed off waivers this week. Give you the scouting report on the right-handed reliever coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball and hockey playoffs are heating up, and there is no better way to turn your sports knowledge into real rewards than with Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and you're in. You can even combine players across sports, basketball, hockey, baseball, and more for your chance to win up to $2,000 in cash. Now, looking at this week, I'm looking at NBA play-in. I'm looking at the NHL playoffs starting. And of course, I'm looking at Major League Baseball. You got to take Connor McDavid, right, to score more than 1 goal. I'll just take the more on that at any time for Connor McDavid. And it's so easy to set your lineup in under 60 seconds at Prize Picks. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prize Picks. Run your game. So in the Orioles' loss on Tuesday, one of the bright spots was Scott Blewett, who I just talked about, an inning and 2/3 scoreless in his Orioles debut. And he came to the O's because they claimed him off waivers from the Minnesota Twins earlier this week. So I'm going to get you the scouting report. Who is right-handed pitcher Scott Blewett? Well, he is a 29-year-old, 6'6", 245-pound right-handed pitcher who was previously a 15th round draft selection by the Royals in 2014 out of high school. He made his major league debut with the Royals in 2020, and he's bounced around 2 years with the Royals, then was in AAA with teams, pitched in China for a while, then pitched with the Twins the last 2 years. Overall, he has 33 career big league innings, a 2.18 big league ERA with 33 strikeouts to 12 walks. Now, when he got back to the bigs with the Twins last year, he pitched in 12 games with Minnesota in 2024, 20 and a third innings. He posted a 1.77 ERA. Now, the FIP was up at 4. He clearly had some luck involved. It wasn't big strikeout numbers. It was 21% strikeout rate to a 9% walk rate. But if there are 20 innings of a sub-2 ERA, you're helping out a baseball team. And he certainly helped out the Twins out of the bullpen last year. Now, they re-signed him to another minor league deal this year. He began the year in AAA, but the Twins needed an arm. And on April 7th, they called up Blewett to their big league roster. He made 2 appearances for the Twins out of the bullpen and was once again good. In those 2 appearances, 4 2/3 innings, 1 run on 4 hits, 5 strikeouts to no walks, and 1 hit batter in that span. But the Twins wanted another arm, and Blewett is out of options. So on April 12th, after those 2 appearances, they DFA'd Scott Blewett and put him on waivers, and that is where the Orioles stepped up and claimed him on Monday. Now, what does he throw? It is really a 3-pitch mix at this point, and that is pretty much what we saw in the game on Tuesday. He threw 29 pitches in Tuesday's outing, 10 splitters, 10 sliders, and 9 four-seam fastballs is what we saw. The four-seamer is 93 to 94. It has solid induced vertical break, about 16 inches, so it's got a little bit of that solid rising effect to it. The slider is 83 to 84 miles an hour. It's not a big sweepy slider. It's kind of a tight break. It has some vertical movement. You saw one of the first ones he threw to Lane Thomas in that first AB in the 7th inning on Tuesday. It's like a bullet slider where it drops almost straight down, but it has this short little bullet movement. It's a very interesting pitch. And then he has his splitter, which the splitters he threw, the 10 of them he threw on Tuesday, had more movement than any splitter he was throwing with the Twins the last couple of years. So maybe the Orioles had to immediately adjust a little bit on the grip of that pitch to make it move more. And it was certainly effective against Guardians hitters on Tuesday night. And his splitter is also interesting because a lot of right-hander splitters, they move away from left-handed batters. His goes more straight down than most splitters do, which I think makes it work a little bit better at times. It's an intriguing pitch mix. I liked what I saw when I was watching video on him. I liked what I saw in his outing on Tuesday night. I think this was a nice low-risk addition by the Orioles. I mean, The splitter so far this year, like, has a whiff rate over 50%. Yeah, it's a low sample size, and he had an 81 overall stuff plus so far this season coming in. But I think that's going to go up after what we saw on Tuesday in his Orioles debut. The splitter and the slider have funky movement. It's an interesting profile for a reliever who can give you length, given the Orioles an inning and 2/3 on Tuesday, which was very helpful for that bullpen at the beginning of this series. Now, he was pretty good in AAA last year. That's where you mostly saw him pitch. 54 and 2/3 innings, AAA for the Twins, 3.79 ERA, 3.35 FIP, 23% strikeout rate, above average, 7% walk rate, below average, as we talked about on Tuesday's episode, talking about pitching stats. Make sure to check that one out. And again, like, both of his MLB outings were good this year. Now all three have been good, including the one with the Orioles. He gives you length. Both of his MLB outings were 2 innings or more. He went 2 innings or more 12 times in AAA out of the bullpen, including as much as 3 2/3 innings with the Twins. So he can give the O some length. So why do the Orioles claim him? Well, there's clearly something here, considering he's done such a good job of just suppressing runs throughout his major league career with those low ERAs he's always had in the big leagues. And he can give this bullpen a little bit of length that doesn't really have like a true long reliever. Even though they have one extra reliever right now, there's 9 relief pitchers. They don't have a true long man. So the ability to add another pitcher like Blewett, who can regularly go 2 innings instead of just the 1, is helpful when you don't have that long guy who can go 3 or 4 plus innings at any time. And there was an open bullpen spot with Eflin on the injured list. The O's had an extra reliever. Colin Selby had pitched once. He has options. So the Orioles sent Colin Selby back to AAA to put Scott Blewett on the roster because he was out of options and he was claimed. He was forced to be directly placed on the active MLB roster. So that is why they had to clear a spot, and Colin Selby was sent back to AAA. And listen, there is a chance he's here for 3 games, or maybe 4 games, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then the Orioles need a starting pitcher on Saturday, as Mike Elias basically alluded to on Tuesday. It's going to be Brandon Young. Young is already on the 40-man, but he has to have to be called up. And you look around the pitching staff, the only guys with options are Keegan Aiken, Felix Bautista, Yennier Cano, Dean Kramer. I mean, there's a chance it's 4 games. Blewett pitches twice, and the Orioles DFA him on Saturday to promote Brandon Young and hope he sneaks through waivers and can stay with them potentially in AAA. But hey, I liked what I saw, and you might as well. When you have that open spot in the bullpen for a few days, it gives you a chance to claim a guy and hold him for a couple of days and see what he's got. At worst, you lose him after a week, but he gives you a couple good outings, and that can be helpful to just the rest of the bullpen throughout the season. Now, this was unfortunate for not just Colin Selby, who got optioned, but also for left-handed pitcher Luis Gonzalez, because the Orioles' 40-man roster was full, so they had to make a move there, and Luis Gonzalez was DFA'd to make room for Blewett on the 40-man. Gonzalez, a 33-year-old left-handed reliever who had been with the Orioles for a while, then went and pitched overseas, and then was re-signed by the O's to a minor league deal last year and had a fantastic season in relief in AAA Norfolk. So the Orioles re-signed him to a minor league deal and added him to the 40-man roster this offseason to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. But he's not pitched since April 8th. He was added to the AAA injured list on April 11th. We haven't seen what the injury is yet. But the fact that they DFA'd him to add like a possible impact reliever, but maybe not even anything, mere months after adding Gonzalez to the 40-man roster, makes me worry that the injury he suffered is some sort of serious long-term injury. I don't have any insight on that. It just makes me worried about that, because he was eventually officially released by the Orioles on Tuesday, because when you're injured and you get DFA'd, you have to be put on release waivers. And if he's seriously hurt, like, the Orioles will most likely try to re-sign him to another minor league deal and allow him to rehab in the Orioles system. We'll keep our eyes on it, but it does make me worry a little bit that Gonzalez is going to be out for an extended amount of time. And that is a tough break for a guy who pitched so well last year, was on the 40-man, and was just steps away from finally at 33 debuting in the big leagues. Just hopefully it's not serious, but it feels like it might be. And that is just a tough break for a guy like Luis Gonzalez. But the Orioles added one more player to the organization, not on the major league roster yet, but has major league experience. That is their new third catcher, Chadwick Tromp. Tell you about him to finish off the show coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Game Time. There is nothing better than catching an MLB game live. The crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the smell of ballpark food. And if you're looking to go last minute, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. With last-minute deals, all-in pricing, and a lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the stress out of buying MLB tickets. Plus, ticket prices drop as Game Time gets closer, meaning you can score an incredible deal. And Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On. And as Orioles games continue to come up, we got a homestand going on this week, I can count on Game Time to help grab tickets that meet my needs. And the best thing about Game Time is how spontaneous you can be. Last year, multiple times, and I plan to do it this year as well, I grabbed tickets like 15 minutes before first pitch when I was standing outside the ballpark. The ticket gets downloaded right onto your app. You don't have to open up your email or anything. You can scan it right on the app, and you are into the ballpark. That, honestly, is my favorite part about Game Time, and Game Time Picks helps you find the best deals in the stadium as well. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB. That is LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So I wanted to quickly finish off today's episode by talking about the other player that the Orioles added to their organization this week, and that is 30-year-old catcher Chadwick Tromp. That is Tromp with an O, Tromp. Signed him to a minor league deal this week, 30-year-old right-handed hitting catcher who was originally a Reds international signing out of Aruba back in 2013. Not a lot of big leaguers that have come out of Aruba, but he debuted in the big leagues with the Giants in 2020. He was kind of the third catcher in San Francisco for 2 years, then moved over to the Braves in 2022, and until last week had been kind of that number 3 up and down catcher for Atlanta. Now, in his big league career, 61 games, 162 plate appearances, hasn't really hit 224 average, 5 homers, a 63 WRC plus. But in AAA with the Braves last year, he was a great hitter. 267 plate appearances, /303, 378, 457, 7 homers, a 120 WRC plus, 11% walk rate, just an 18% strikeout rate. And I know he was 29 years old in AAA, but that's really good for a third catcher kind of bat. He had a 43% hard hit rate, max EV of about 111 miles an hour. Like that is a good season at AAA. Now, last year was his best MLB chance. He got 54 plate appearances during the time he was serving as the Braves backup in the big leagues, and he's always graded out as a good defensive catcher. That's what he was as a prospect as well, so that's very helpful. Trump started this year in AAA again. Sean Murphy and top prospect Drake Baldwin were the 2 catchers that made the Braves roster, but Sean Murphy cracked a rib 3 days into the season, so Trump was called up as the backup for Atlanta. Now, he barely played while he was up there. He got into 2 games, and he went 0 for 6 at the plate with 2 strikeouts and a walk. Like, yeah, he didn't play much at all. And then he was DFA'd on April 6th when Sean Murphy randomly came back after like the minimum 10 days. He was all of a sudden fine. Now, Trump cleared waivers, and he had the ability to elect free agency, so he did that instead of going back to AAA with the Braves. And he found a new organization as the Orioles signed him to a minor league deal on Tuesday. Now, he will report to Norfolk, and that is where he will sit, but he will etch himself in as the Orioles' number 3 catcher. And that's kind of answered the question, why would the Orioles bring in a 30-year-old catcher on a minor league deal right now? Well, I've talked about this a few times this offseason, but there's no real like veteran MLB catcher in AAA for the O's, and it's something they've had over the past few years, whether it's been, remember some guys, Anthony Bemboom, Mark Colesbury, Michael Perez in AAA have served as kind of that veteran catcher, number 3 organizational catcher in AAA, coming up when they're needed for a couple of days the last few years. And between Maverick Hanley, David Banuelos, Connor Pavoloni, Samuel Basallo in AAA, they just didn't have the guy that fit that bill exactly. And you worried, hey, if Adley Rutschman or Gary Sanchez goes down with a quick injury, there was no veteran guy in AAA with big league experience who you could call up for a week to just be your backup catcher, start once, and then hopefully have Adley or Gary back. Like if one of those 2 guys suffered a long-term injury, the Orioles would probably go elsewhere or think about Basallo. But for a short-term injury, they didn't have the guy that fit that mold. Trump exactly fits that mold, and that is nice. Just gives you a better short-term backup. But also, Samuel Basallo and now David Banuelos are both on the AAA injured list right now. Banuelos is usually the traveling taxi squad catcher that comes on the road with the big league team and comes to the home games as well, but he's on the IL, so someone else needs to travel with the team. It'll probably end up being Maverick Hanley. So that leaves you as Connor Pavolony as the only catcher in AAA. Now they'll call someone up from AA to add to the roster, but you like to have 3 catchers in AAA at all times. So that's where Tromp helps you as well. He also worked with Drew French and Charlie Morton when he was in Atlanta, so he knows some of the Orioles people. It's just a nice another depth move to make you feel a little better. Hey, if there is an injury to a catcher, we have this guy with not a lot, but legitimate big league experience who's been around the block for a while, who's had success in AAA, who can fill in that role if we need him to. And that is why Chadwick Tromp, with an O, the Orioles signed to a minor league deal earlier this week. That'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to the show. Leave a 5-star rating and a review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify really helps out the pod. And we're here on YouTube. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel, where you can find Tuesday's episode if you missed it. It kind of broke down all of the advanced stats I talk about when evaluating Orioles pitchers as kind of an explainer for the things I mention on this show. Make sure to check that one out if you have not already. And if you want to talk ball, you have thoughts on the podcast, Orioles questions, mailbag questions, whatever it may be, you can always email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. I'll be back tomorrow as we recap Game 2 between the Orioles and the Guardians. O's looking to even the series. Gavin Williams, the young right-hander with a 3.46 ERA, goes for the Guardians. 5 innings of 1-run ball against the White Sox for him the last time out. He goes up against Dean Kramer, who's also been bad this year, an 8.16 ERA in his first 3 starts. He'll look to get his season on track, a 6:35 first pitch on Masson 2 tonight. Then I'm back tomorrow to recap that game, plus run through all those injury updates Mike Elias gave to the media about the Orioles pitchers and others before Tuesday's game. But that's coming up on tomorrow's episode. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.